I just don't see how Houston, with a 37-year-old Kevin Durant, is going to get past the second round. If that. Welcome to episode 279 of Empty the Bench here on the Empty the Bench podcast network. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at ETB Sports. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Over the 960 mark as we get closer to 1,000 subscribers. So please hit the subscribe button below if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening wherever you get your podcasts on the audio side as well. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart. We offer this on all audio platforms. So please check us out there as well. Also, Empty the Bench and the network presented by Playback. Listen later on in the program to find out more about what we're doing. We just finished the NBA Finals, which went 7 games. Which was incredible. That last game, not so great, which we'll get into in a moment. Playback.tv/ETB Network, but you'll hear more about that later. Okay. So, jam-packed episode this week of episode 279. It's going to be a lot of NBA, so if you're an NBA fan, good for you. If you're not an NBA fan, just bear with us because the NBA offseason situation took off in a major way quicker than what you thought and what I thought. So we're going to spend a whole lot on this episode, but we will break down the OKC Thunder winning their first title as an OKC Thunder franchise. I know people are going to talk about 1970 and the Seattle Supersonics, but this is a different franchise. So we're going to talk about that as well. We'll get into the Haliburton injury and how that affected them. But before we do anything, how are we doing today, Anthony?
Not too bad. Honestly, I'm a little depressed. I think this is the time of year where if you're not a huge baseball fan, I know we got breaking news with the NBA draft and free agency, but now the NHL's over, now that NBA's over, football hasn't started yet. The month of July is kind of the month where we don't got a lot of sports going on, so it's definitely a little depressing, but I guess we still got a lot to talk about, and the way the NBA is now, the offseason now is just as exciting as the regular season. So I guess that's something that we have to look forward to.
I mean, now with the NBA offseason and the NFL offseasons feel like they're all year round, or the sport feels all year round. It feels like your sport or any of our sports really go down anymore. So there's always news, and before you know it, the NFL and the college football season will be here, and then it becomes a craze. And then we look back and we're like, oh, wait, it's the end of the year. Where did the year go? So it's a good time to kind of reflect a little bit once the heavy part of the year comes in. So we still have a lot to talk about, like we said, but let's get into it. The Oklahoma City Thunder win the 2025 NBA championship or title, however you want to refer to it. First title in their history. Yes, I said in technicality because the Seattle Supersonics became the OKC Thunder. Great series, and I think I could speak for almost everybody. But this series going 7 games, this was an incredible series. It was a lot better series than everybody expected. No one, I guarantee if you ask everybody, no one thought this was going to go 7 games at all, including ourselves. We didn't think this was going to be a 7-game series. But the Pacers fought way harder than I thought in this series and made it a much more competitive series than I thought this was going to be. But of course, the headline is not necessarily that they won the title, but the headline is more about a certain injury, which we'll get to in a moment. But what's your first thought when you see OKC Thunder wins the 2025 title?
I guess not surprised at all. I mean, if you watch the entire season, it seemed like it was an okay season from start to finish. Now, I know they had some bumps in the road. The Pacers gave them a real good fight, made it close all the way to the end. Like we said, because of a particular player getting hurt, maybe that game 7 will be much closer. We'll obviously break that down later. But man, OKC, there was multiple times, twice this year, where they were down 2-1, had to go on the road to win a game, and they did it both times. Also winning 2 game sevens. This is a team that won 68 games during the regular season, and then obviously came out, won another 16 games during the postseason. So I'm pretty sure if you do postseason, regular season wins, this is the third most wins ever in a single season by an NBA franchise. So it may not seem like it watching them, but honestly, this is a historic team, and what they did was historic. And I think, honestly, Nick, I think the way they built their team should be kind of the blueprint to everybody else. They didn't go out and buy all these superstars or trade all these assets for players. They did the opposite. They traded the stars that they already had on their team for multiple draft picks and just built their team the right way. Now, I know they did get SGA in the trade, but that was before SGA became SGA and became that superstar that we know of. And then when you look at the players they drafted, Jalen Williams, Cason Wallace, Chet Holmgren, Sam Presti has really built this team. And not only has he built this team, he built this team perfectly for the modern era. This team's long, they can play defense, and they can obviously shoot threes when they need. And now we see the emergence of Jalen Williams, who's now an all-star. And I know they're going to have to pay these guys, but I think that at least for the next 1 to 2 years, this is a team that's not going to go anywhere. And I know you have to hit on your draft picks, and certain things have to go your way. But I think all GMs should look at the way Oklahoma City did it. They also did it coming out of a small market where they're not, going to be getting the top free agents, but they didn't have to. They built it the right way through the draft, and I'm just glad that we get to see this. And we're seeing this parity in the NBA where now we've had, I think, 7 or 8 straight years with a new champion. So this is the best time to be an NBA fan, and it goes to show you that if you stockpile picks and draft the right way, anybody can build the right team to compete. So I'm real happy for them. And like I said last week, if they win this, and they did, I think it's undoubtedly that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander now is the greatest Oklahoma City Thunder player to ever play. Now, I know Kevin Durant career-wise might be better, but if we're talking about what players accomplished in that Oklahoma City Thunder jersey, I mean, you're looking at a guy like SGA who was runner-up for the MVP, then came back and won the MVP, won the championship, and won the finals MVP. Something that Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook cannot do. So SGA, I think, is definitely the best player to ever play for the Thunder.
Well, what was it? So he won the scoring title, he won the NBA MVP, and won the regular season MVP, which was like a first since like Shaq, I think, in 2000. The guy is an incredible player. Now, one thing that did frustrate me, and you probably saw it through the series, is the amount of non-foul calls they would put against SGA for using the arm and the elbow. Nicky and I were having a argument, debate, discussion because he's the MVP. He doesn't get foul calls. That bothered me many times because they would just blow the whistle every time he would drive to the hoop during the finals. I get it. I know it's a star-driven league. I know that. But I wish they would call all fouls evenly, whether you're a star player or not. I mean, I guess you could say that it all started with the LeBron James treatment when he entered the league. But you know what? It was a great series. Like you said, it was 84 wins combined between the regular season and the playoffs. It's tied with actually one of the Michael Jordan Bulls teams. So you're right. It's a historic team. I think OKC was just the better offensive team and also the better defensive team. It's the first time in quite a long time that OKC was a top 3 team offensively and defensively in the regular season. Like, that's a phenomenon in itself. You just don't see that. You don't see teams that are willing to compete on both sides of the ball anymore because you have guys like James Harden in the league who only focus offensively instead of defensively. You have way more players in today's game that only worry about offense and not defense, or defense, not offense. Actually, preferably, I'd probably have it more defense than offense because you're more useful that way at times. But they were just a better team, and that's why they won the series. Don't get me wrong. The Pacers, as you were saying before, really fought through this whole playoffs. And what I said to Nick D the other day, I said, even though they're great, you have to have luck. You have to have timing on your side on certain things. Cleveland had some bad luck with injuries because, in my opinion, if Cleveland is healthy, I don't think they lose that series. That's just my opinion. I know that's hard to say now, considering that the Pacers made the finals and they made it through 7 games, but they were down. How many players were they down at one point by the end of that series?
I think that at one point, Donovan Mitchell, of their 4 stars, I think he was the only one for some of those games. Evan Mobley was dealing with injuries. Darius Garland was out, and then even when he played, Darius Garland didn't play like the same Darius Garland before. And then DeAndre Hunter was missing some time as well. So you're talking 3 of their top 4 players on their team.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell was not his normal self by the end of that series, and he had to carry that team the whole rest of the series just because the injuries were so bad. So if Cleveland is at full strength, I don't know if they survive that series 100%. I think Cleveland fights back and possibly wins that series, but that's neither here nor there. But since we're talking about the finals, I think we have to talk about a headline, unfortunately, that kind of took over the series in Game 7, and that was Tyrese Haliburton tearing his Achilles, and you knew right away when he went down and he was banging the floor, you knew that it was a torn Achilles. It was the same exact injury, by the way, as Jason Tatum and Dame Lillard, all in the playoffs. And another odd thing about it, they're all number 0. Which I don't know. I
didn't even notice. That's crazy.
I didn't know if that was coincidence or not, but they all 3 of their jersey numbers, they wear 0. I did look at the slow motion. This was not like Tatum where you see it in the heel of the foot. This was like more up in the calf leg area. Like you saw it kind of like, if you're watching on the video side, like kind of snappage a little bit in the upper part of the leg. It was a little odd watching it, but you knew right away. I didn't like what the Pacers were doing either, where they were basically like, oh, it's a lower leg injury. And can we not play dumb? Like, we knew his season was over. We know he's going to miss next year because that injury takes like a year of recovery just to get through. But let's be clear about one thing. He went down. They didn't play too poorly in the first half. They were up by 1 by the end of the first half. But not having Haliburton totally changed the outcome of that game and how hard they actually played.
Yeah, 1,000%, especially when you factor in how good Tyrese Haliburton was. You could tell when Tyrese Haliburton, very early on, you could tell if Haliburton's getting beyond or not. We've seen games where Haliburton's shot is just not hitting, and then he just has to become more of a passer. But then there's games where he comes out firing, and this was one of those games where he wasn't going to come up short in the big moment. I think I'm pretty sure that he hit like 4 threes before he had the injury, or 3 threes. So he was on fire, and it looked like we were going to get this iconic matchup of SGA versus Tyrese Haliburton, and it seemed like they were just going to go back and forth all game. And then as soon as Tyrese Haliburton went down, it was just devastating. I mean, my heart goes out to him. I know mentally that's really tough to recover from. And then, for the guys in the locker room, like Obi Toppin, he was even saying when he was on the court, it was hard for him to focus because all he was thinking about was his brother who was hurt. So emotionally, I know they played good in the first half, but you can see as this game wore on and when they got closer to the fourth quarter, emotionally, they just weren't the same team. And Tyrese Haliburton is not only the best player, he's the heart and soul of this team and franchise. And it's just unfortunate, Nick, because, like you said, you got him, you got Jason Tatum and Damian Lillard. Now, Tatum and Haliburton should make a full recovery given their ages. Damian Lillard, on the other hand, given, being older, that's going to be tougher for him to come back. But either way, man, when you look at this Eastern Conference for next year, it's going to be wide open because obviously if Haliburton's out for the whole year, you really can't bank on the Pacers being a true contender. I mean, I know they're going to fight. And with Pascal Siakam and some of the other players, they can still be a playoff team. But no one's going to pick them to go to the conference finals or win the East again. And without Jason Tatum, I know they got Jaylen Brown and they made some trades that we'll talk about. That's not going to be a team that's probably going to win the East either. So, I mean, for teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers, the New York Knicks, and the Orlando Magic, who just got Desmond Bane, those 3 teams look like they have a perfect opportunity to win the East. And if there was ever a time to win the East, it's going to be next year because those 2 guys will be back in 2026. And then you're going to have to worry about the Pacers and the Celtics again. I also think one thing that this may impact is Giannis. If you look at Giannis now, why would you want him to leave Milwaukee? If you're on Milwaukee and if they can somehow figure out a way to add a piece or 2 to go around you, as great as Giannis is, he can get that team pretty far now with how weak the East is going to be. So if I was Giannis, I would definitely not want to get traded to the West. I would want to stay right where I'm at now because right now the East is up for grabs because of these guys' unfortunate injuries.
I mean, one team I would look at, and originally I said no the Knicks. The Knicks might actually be a opportunity if he could somehow get traded to New York to play with Jalen Brunson, and I think they would have to trade Towns to make that trade happen. But playing with Jalen Brunson on a Knicks squad, like, you would have to say instant contender, right? Like, if those two are playing together, I mean, I think the Knicks are, I guess you have to say, are a contender still at the top with these injuries. And these are two direct rivals of the Knicks right here. So with Haliburton being down, now let's be clear about one thing. They still have Mathurin, who I think is turning into a small little star himself. Like the way he played. I think Shepard's a really good player who kind of showed himself off the bench. They have to go re-sign Miles Turner, which I think they will do. They're going to have to overpay for it, but I think they should because he's the heart and soul of the team. So he's going to be back. TJ McConnell, by the way, can we talk about him for a second? Because I think that was a big deal. And basically, he's one of those guys, like, and people give him a lot of shit for some reason because the guy is a human spark plug off the bench for this team. If it's not for TJ McConnell in this series, they don't make it to the 7th game of this NBA Finals. They just don't. At times, I kept saying during the playback streams, they should leave him in.
No, I agree. I mean, you can make an argument. Obviously, Tyrese Haliburton was the MVP of this team. But at times, TJ McCollum was just as valuable as a Pascal Siakam or a Miles Turner. I mean, we saw what he was doing when Haliburton's absence. I think he scored, 12 straight points, and he was hitting mid-range, he was hitting threes, he was going to the rim and deking guys out against guys like Chet Holmgren who are 7-footers. You know what it is, Nick, is he's just not the ideal player that would put fear in you. I mean, he's a smaller guard that's not super overly athletic, so a lot of guys underestimate him, but TJ McConnell is the guy that has to be respected, and I'm glad that they rewarded him with a contract extension, I think just recently, if not a year ago, so he definitely deserves it. And one last thing I'll say about the Thunder. I think, the days of the dynasties, teams winning 4, 5, 6 championships, I think just there's too many great players and the league is too good all around that we won't see that. But if there's a team who's equipped to maybe repeat or maybe win 2 championships in a 3-year period, it is this Oklahoma City Thunder team. And I really don't see this team for at least the next 2 years going anywhere.
I mean, one thing I forgot to point out, because you talked about Sam Presti before, the amount of draft picks, even after winning the NBA title, what do they have, like 13 or 15 first-round picks just from all the draft capital they built up? And I even read a rumor or speculation that they're trying to trade up in this 2025 draft. I mean, this team is incredible from a lot of standpoint. Now, say they're not able to re-sign all those guys because it's going to cost them a lot of money. Like, Jalen Williams I think he's only making like $6 million. Think about that in theory from a standpoint of only making $6 million. This guy's going to cost a fortune in a couple of years. Now, I know SGA made 38, I think, this year, and he's making 40 next year, and then he's a free agent. That's an underpay, technically, for SGA in some sense. That he's probably going to hit the market at 60 plus, probably, when he hits free agency. So this team is set for a long time when it comes to draft capital, and they can even use some of these first-round picks to go out and create another big 3 if they really wanted to, if they can't afford all that salary cap. Now, if this turns into a Golden State Warriors situation where Joe Lacob and the ownership was willing to basically pay the tax penalty to keep Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson all together, then they might be willing if they can win a couple of championships and stay involved in that way. So it all depends if the ownership is willing to pay the money. But what we're seeing now is because of the second apron issues, teams are not willing to overspend because it costs like it's like a 25% penalty if you're over the second apron now. So the big 3 is the past, kind of. You're seeing like big 2 duos. That's like the big thing you're seeing now because that's what the teams can afford, 2 big salaries to really stay in the mix. But we'll have to see what happens and where this goes. But they're set for the future for a very long time. And just one last note on the Haliburton injury. It's a long road. It's going to be a long road for Haliburton. It's going to be a long road for Tatum. It's going to be a long road for Dame. Like you said, Dame is the oldest player, so it is going to be the toughest for him to come back. But Haliburton is on the younger-ish side, so I think it'll be easier for him to recover. And he already had the surgery because I saw the tweet and I saw the picture go out. So they were on top of this. They were quicker than Jason Tatum. They waited like a week or two to have the surgery. But he'll recover. Both of them will recover. So the NBA might be down a little bit for a year because they don't have two stars, but the NBA will find a way. They actually made a trade also for Anfernee Simons. I think I saw that deal come out because they're looking to at least hold a shooter spot, and that allowed them to kind of shed some salary. But your OKC Thunder are the champions. It's going to be tough to repeat because, like you said, we haven't seen a repeat champion since the Golden State Warriors. I think was it like 15, 16 or something like that?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I think did they repeat when they had KD?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. But that's pretty much the story, and that's putting a bow on the 2025 NBA season, which is hard to believe that the season is finally over. Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. Now we move into the craziness, which is the NBA offseason, which is already off to an incredible start. And we got to start with the news that broke over the last couple days. Kevin Durant traded to the Houston Rockets. Now, what's interesting about this, I was at Fanatics Fest over the last weekend. The news broke at the third day of Fanatics Fest. And he was on stage for his boardroom thing that he has. And all of a sudden, people in the crowd are screaming, KD, you got traded to the Rockets. And he's acting like he has no clue whatsoever, which I hope, like most smart NBA fans, you don't buy the fact that he didn't know that he was being traded to the Rockets. That is the biggest load of BS, that he acted like he didn't know. He knew, right?
Yeah, there's no way us fans are going to find out, sooner than the player that's actually being traded. It's impossible.
So the trade happens, and the deal was just, I think the Suns got way less than they were expecting in this deal. So the Houston Rockets, so they traded Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the number 10 overall pick in this year's draft, and 5 second-round picks. So I think Houston won that deal by far. I'm willing to trade 5 second-round picks. Take Dylan Brooks off my hands. I don't want to deal with him anymore at all in Houston. Jalen Green, I think they gave up on a little too quick, in my opinion, because I think he's a really good player. I think he's only 23 years old, if I'm not mistaken either. But I guess in the Rockets' thinking, they're a win-now team, I guess, in that sense, even though they're a young team. But is Kevin Durant really the answer? He hasn't been a leader in any of the destinations he's really gone to. Golden State, that was Steph Curry's team. I don't want to hear anything. I know he won the NBA Finals MVP in Golden State, but who do you think earned him the MVP? Steph Curry earned him the MVP. It's the same thing like when LeBron went to Miami. Even though LeBron won the Finals MVP, who was the leader of the team? Dwayne Wade. So I don't see any leadership skills coming out of this because that's just not his game. And he's also 37 years old. He's not the Slim Reaper of back in the day. So, initial reaction, because I've been on this quite a few times already, initial reaction to this trade.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't surprised. I thought the Spurs would have probably been the most likely chance to trade for him. And then since it wasn't the Spurs, the Rockets definitely make the most sense. And I know we've been saying ad nauseum that if the Rockets were going to get Kevin Durant, there's no way they were going to give up Sengun. So they're able to keep Sengun. They got rid of Jalen Green, who, yes, being 22, 23 years old, it does seem a little too soon. I mean, this guy is not even close to what his potential is. And, I mean, this guy has a super high potential. I mean, this guy at some point in his career could be a perennial all-star top 15 scorer in the NBA. Now, I know he lacks consistency in the playoffs. His scoring was kind of inconsistent. Some games he scored a lot, some games he'd be missing. And defensively, he's kind of been a sore on the team. He doesn't really give you much defensively. I think with Kevin Durant, given his size and the way Kevin Durant plays, every night he's going to give you that 25 to 30 points in his sleep. And obviously, he's going to be a much better defensive player, even at his age, than what Jalen Green was. So I think this definitely helps out the Rockets. They're obviously still able to keep Iman Thompson, who's one of the most athletic, bright stars in the NBA. You got Jabari Smith, who kind of is a similar body type to a Kevin Durant. So I think that's a good guy that they can learn from. And, yeah, Kevin Durant is not a good leader. I don't think he's enough to get this team over the hump and to win an NBA championship at all. But I definitely think he gives them at least a chance to compete, maybe think about a championship, and maybe get as far as the NBA Finals or a Western Conference Finals. It definitely makes the Rockets a much better team. And instead of being one of those young, inexperienced teams that play good in the regular season and then losing the first and second round, I think this is a team that you have to respect. And like I said, I don't see him win the championship, but I can see him getting very close, and they are a much better team. Losing Dylan Brooks, I mean, that's a guy that you love to hate. He's a guy that you probably want in your roster. He's an agitator. He's kind of like your enforcer. You kind of need guys like that when you want to win NBA championships. But I think those are guys that you could always find in every year in free agency. So I'm pretty sure they'll bring in some athletic guard that can kind of replace that. But I definitely like this trade for the Rockets. I think they got the best end of the deal. And you look at the Suns, I just don't know how they're going to construct their team. I mean, all they got is a bunch of shooting guards. Bradley Beal's a shooting guard, Devin Booker's a shooting guard, and Jalen Green's a shooting guard. So I'm not sure how they're going to be able to make this work. I mean, they probably aren't even really factoring Bradley Beal. They're probably just hoping to build around Booker and Jalen Green. But, man, the Suns are just a team that I'm not sure what direction they're going to be going in the next couple of years. And I don't see how that's an organization that's going to be able to compete soon.
The other insane, since we talk about salary cap, which is the big problem. When you look at the Suns, you have, like you said, you have Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, who basically has locked himself in with a no-trade clause, which I don't understand why. They've tried to trade him multiple times. He's basically said, nope, don't trade me, multiple times. And now you have Jalen Green. If I'm not mistaken, did I hear correctly those three guys are going to cost them like $290 million over the next 2 years each? I mean, that's insane. That's like 90% of the cap. I mean, the Suns put themselves more in a hole, if you really want to ask me. They didn't really get enough for Kevin Durant. If you look what the Nets did when they traded Kevin Durant to the Suns, they got 5 first-round picks. They got Mikal Bridges at the time, which was a really nice young piece before he demanded out to go to the Knicks. And then I think they also got 5 second-round picks on top of it. So, that was a really good deal for the Nets because they got the future picks that they really needed out of that deal. I don't know what the Suns got, to be quite honest. Dylan Brooks is a question mark. Jalen Green's a really good player, but is he going to fit in a Suns system, which is like a slow play system, unlike Houston, which is a run and gunner type of system, which I think was really good for Jalen Green because that allows him to spread out and either get an open shot or drive to the rim. That's why I thought the system worked really well. But Kevin Durant is going to slow down the run and gunner system that Houston had. That's why I don't know if it's exactly the best fit for Kevin Durant. And now the other question I'll ask you, which I've asked a lot of people so far, is so they finished second overall seed in the Western Conference this past season. And where did they get eliminated in the playoffs?
I think they may have lost in the first round, didn't they?
Yeah, I think you're right. Because they didn't play in the play-in. They played in the first round. So basically making this deal for Kevin Durant, you need to finish because when they say you make a big deal, you got to finish higher up. Can you guarantee that Houston is going to finish as a 1 seed this year? And in my opinion, if they're saying that they're going to make a deep run, they got to win at least 2 rounds.
Yeah, I don't think when they say that they have to be better, I don't think they care about what they accomplish in the regular season. I think they're fine being a second or third seed. But like you said, they're going to have to go deeper in the playoffs. There's no way that if this team loses in the first or second round, that's going to be acceptable. When you add a guy like Kevin Durant and you make this move, the bare minimum is the Western Conference Finals. And I mean, when you look at that, Oklahoma City, there's no way they're even with this trade. They're not going to be able to get past Oklahoma City. So hopefully that's the one team that they can't beat, but you're still going to have to get past teams like the Denver Nuggets with Nikola Jokic. They're not going anywhere. And then if the Dallas Mavericks, if they add Cooper Flag and if Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving get healthy, that's a team you have to watch out too. And then you look at Luka and LeBron. There's so many great teams. Golden State now with second year with Jimmy Butler and Curry. The West is so stacked with all these teams, and anybody can beat anybody. But, man, they're going to have to go through the gauntlet of the West, and they're going to have to beat some of these teams. And I'm not sure. I mean, right now on paper, they look like they could possibly be the second best team in the West behind OKC. But what's on paper and what is actually done on the court is two completely different things.
See, in my opinion, I think they're going to drop in the seedings because Kevin Durant can't stay healthy for a full season. Excuse me, we've had proof of that for the past couple of years. This guy always has some kind of injury-prone type injury every year where he misses 2 to 3 weeks. And that's a disaster for the Rockets because they don't have a secondary guy. Fred VanVleet, I'm sorry, is not a second-story guy here. Like, they paid him A-level money, but he's not an A-level player. Let's just be honest. And I think if I'm not mistaken, he had a player option, and they have to redo his contract, I think, starting June 30th. So they're going to resign him, but they overpaid him to come here by far.
So let me ask you, Nick. I know you're saying that in terms of the seeding, the regular season, they may regress. But if we're talking about the playoffs, I mean, how far do you see this team going in the playoffs? You think they could get to the Western Conference Finals?
I think, like you started to say, the Western Conference is as deep as it's ever been in quite a long time. And I think Dallas being competitive, which I'm hoping they will be, hopefully Kyrie Irving can get his head screwed on straight, which is a big question mark. If Anthony Davis can get healthy, that's a giant question mark too.
And don't forget about the Timberwolves too.
I love the Timberwolves. I love the way that they're constructed. And if Anthony Edwards can really play the way he does and continue to play, I just don't see how Houston, with a 37-year-old Kevin Durant, is going to get past the second round. If that. Because, like, if I pull up I want to see if I can pull up just the standings from this year. But, all right, so here's the standings. So OKC was first, then Houston. LA finished third, miraculously, even with all the injuries. Then you had Denver fourth, then you had the Clippers fifth, Timberwolves sixth, and then the 7 to 10 is a crapshoot just because they play the play-in tournament. But you had the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Kings, and the Mavericks. So if I look at all these teams, OKC is automatically better than Houston. I'm not even putting a debate or discussion into that one whatsoever. The Lakers, they could beat the Lakers. I think they could beat the Lakers. But am I going to say that's a definite? No, because when you have LeBron and Luka on the same team, that's a tough battle in itself. Denver's been kind of a question mark the past couple of years, but how can you not put them up there in a discussion to win with Jokic and company being there? I like Jamal Murray, too. He's just got to get his head out of his you-know-what sometimes when he's playing. The Clippers, I would throw away. I just don't think they're ever going to get over the hump like they need to. Minnesota is the team I'm going to watch, though, because they finished 49-33. They had a little bit of a down in the middle of the season, so that's why they didn't finish higher up in the seeding. But could you see Minnesota finishing in the top 3 or 4 seeds? I could.
Yeah, I could too. The West is so deep, like you said. There's probably 8 teams that you wouldn't be surprised if they finish in the top 4. I mean, There's even a team who didn't even make the play-in tournament that we got to talk about. And what about the San Antonio Spurs? If Victor Wembanyama comes back and he becomes one of the best players in the league, the Spurs could be a tough out as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Spurs season was kind of a throwaway just because they had the issues with Pop and his situation, and Wemby, who I got to see at Fanatics, by the way. The guy looks like he's 8 foot, being up close and personal, to be quite honest. That would have been incredible if KD actually went there and they were able to make that work. I almost would have thrown the Spurs up as an almost instant contender if KD ended up in San Antonio. But I don't know why he went to Houston, to be quite honest with you, because he picks his destination. Let's not be fooled and say that the team just traded him to Houston. That's a whole other rumor I've heard, and it's silly. But I don't know. Houston won this trade. Let's just be real, because the Suns got nothing except for Jalen Green. So do I think they're a championship contender? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think the Rockets are. The only thing that this does for the Rockets, 2 things. Jersey sales will go up with Durant being in a Rockets uniform, and they probably will end up with a few more national games on TV because everyone wants to watch Kevin Durant. Everybody. So I don't know. Are you on that train? Not on that train about being contender? I don't think they're a contender.
I think whenever you add KD to them, basically you're flipping Jalen Green, who was real inconsistent, for Kevin Durant. I think that definitely makes them a contender. But in the West, there's about 6 or 7 contenders that we just named, and it's a gauntlet. So even if you're a contender, you can still end up losing in the first or second round. So, the West, you just kind of got to flip a coin and hope that, the ball goes your way. And with Kevin Durant's history, trying to be the leader on the team, it hasn't gone so well. So if you're going based on history, this is probably a second-round team, just like KD has had in the past.
All I'll say is if they flame out before the second round, it's going to be a huge PR nightmare, disaster if they flame out. Or if, God forbid, they don't make the playoffs. There's going to be a massive issue in Houston. They just signed Ime Udoka, their head coach, to one of the highest paid extensions as a head coach, which, by the way, I don't think he even deserved that, to be quite honest. But I'm going to say, excuse me, that the jury is out on this one right now because I have no idea really what to expect in Houston. Keeping it in the NBA trade realm, this trade comes out of nowhere. Jrue Holiday traded to Portland. Now, Boston had an issue because they were way over the cap. I think the speculation or the rumor was that they were going to have like a $500 million payroll if they didn't start making moves. And this had to be done, right?
Yeah, this was out of necessity. I love Brad Stevens. He even goes to show you when it looks like his hands are tied and you got your best player being out for potentially the whole next season. He figures out a way to put this team in the best position. When you look at this trade, Jrue Holiday, yes, 2 years ago, one of the better players in the NBA, was super impactful for this team to win a championship. But I think last year you saw him regress a little bit. And now being 35 years old, knowing you're not going to get beat this year. So when Tatum comes back, you're looking at a 36-year-old guard who's not going to be in his prime. I think this made tremendous sense. They were able to save quite a bit of money. I think it was $40 million. And then they get a really young guard in Anthony Simmons, who can shoot the three and can play really, really well. And I think with him being just 25, 26 years old, that allows him now to grow with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for the foreseeable future. And it also allows him to get a lot of minutes, play a lot, see what he does this year. And then when Tatum comes back, those are 3 guys with Derek White that you can hang your head on. So I think this was the best trade that they could possibly get, and it makes a lot of sense. And it goes to show you why Brad Stevens is one of the best GMs in the NBA.
Yeah, so I think if I remember correctly, the Anthony Simmons deal is not passed this year either. So, excuse me, it's an expiring contract, which in a lot of terms actually is in favor of the team making the trade. I don't think they're going to extend him past this coming season because they know Jason Tatum's going to come back and they'll have Jaylen Brown and they'll go from there and they'll reevaluate. The saving of $40-50 million was a big deal. Just like I said, because they were going to have like a $500 million payroll, which is a disaster unless you're a Warriors team that's winning a bunch of titles, you're not willing to pay that luxury tax hit. Now, so it says Holiday was owed around $72 million in 2026, 27, and 27, 28. That's a lot of money for a player of his caliber. That's not Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, or other players like that. The interesting thing about this trade with Jrue Holiday going back to Portland in this deal, do you see who he's playing with again?
Who's he playing with again?
Or where was he traded? Was he traded to Portland or was he traded to the Bucks? Oh, Portland? They were saying like it had something to do with a connection with Damian Lillard. Oh, he was part of the trade originally with Dame Lillard.
That makes sense.
That was it. So this is the second time that he's now been moved in connection to this scenario with everything going on. But like you said, it saves $40 million in the luxury tax payments for next year. And then I'm just trying to read the rest of the deal. Portland received Holiday back back after trading him to Boston 2 years ago for Brogdon, Robert Williams, a bunch of throwaway stuff. But do you think this is a good deal or no?
I think it's a tremendous deal for Boston. I don't think it's a tremendous deal for Portland, who's a team who's got a lot of young players that it seems like they were just trying to build their team, through the draft and through the young players. I mean, maybe they're hoping Jrue Holiday could be that veteran leadership that could kind of grow the young guys like a Scoot Henderson, like a Shaedon Sharpe. Man, that's a lot of money to be paying a guy who's probably going to be past his prime. But I guess Portland, who really isn't playing that many other people outside DeAndre Ayton, I guess they have the money. But this is not a team that's going to compete in, especially in the West. That's just a gauntlet. This is a team that probably won't even be making a playing tournament.
Yeah, so good on Boston. They needed to shed money. They had no choice. If they had a $500 million payroll, can you imagine the 25% penalty for every dollar or whatever that they're over? I can't even imagine what the luxury tax threshold would have been.
You pretty much got to be guaranteed to be winning the championship like the Warriors were with Kevin Durant, to be paying that type of money. And without Jason Tatum, maybe this is a team that can make the Eastern Conference Finals, but they're not sniffing a championship next season.
Oh, no. They're pretty much in a temporary rebuild mode for a year, which sounds odd considering they have 2 stars on their roster. But this was more of just a money-clearing move, as they say in the NBA. So there's not really much to read into it from a standpoint, the Celtics are doing whatever. No, they had to. They had to shed salary. So...
And speaking of shedding salary, they traded another player too.
Yeah, so let's go over to that. So Shams Charania was busy because this was a busy day in the NBA offseason front. So the Celtics, the Hawks, and the Nets finalizing a 3-team trade that sends Kristaps Porzingis and a second-round pick to the Hawks and Terrence Mann and Atlanta's number 22 pick to the Nets. Again, this is a shedding move. If we're going to be really honest, first of all, I don't think Porzingis really fit on this roster. I know why they needed someone like him, because they didn't really have a big man in the center. So that's why it kind of worked in some regards, because when he was healthy, beginning of the playoffs, he helped a ton with rebounds. But then he got like long-form COVID or something, and he just couldn't play the rest of the way. So it was kind of a wasted body on the roster. But again, I think you got to put this under the category of they're trying to shed salary, right?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, I'm just surprised that they were able to even find a trade partner for Porzingis, and this is probably why they had to have a 3-team trade for this to make it work. Now, Porzingis is healthy. Now, that injury, he scares me because it's not even really an injury. It's like an illness that you really don't know how that's going to work out. That's going to be a long-term thing that's going to be lingering. But, man, if he could be healthy with him and Trae Young, I think that could be a really fascinating combo. And for Porzingis, he was exactly what they needed at the time. They probably don't win the championship without him being there. He was very impactful. But now you're at this point where he's not as impactful as he once was, and they have to shed salary cap. So, I mean, man, this was a tremendous move again by Brad Stevens. You know, when you looked at, probably no shot at being able to get Porzingis, even if you're not able to get anything, the fact that they were able to shed some money with Jrue Holiday and Porzingis, this definitely allows the Celtics to where they're not going to have those huge penalties financially.
According to Bobby Marks, who is the front office insider for ESPN, after that deal was made, so these direct words from Bobby Marks, trading Kristaps Porzingis now puts Boston under the second apron, which is the big phrase that's going around now. The Porzingis and Jrue Holiday trade saved Boston a projected $180 million in tax penalties.
Wow.
Think about that. Two players, which were not necessarily the highest salaries, but it was a lot of money. Remember what I said about the 25% penalty for everything that goes down? $180 million in penalties because of these two guys being moved. I mean, I guess that goes to show you that they knew what they were doing to get under the cap.
Yeah, and it's crazy that's how much money was going to be shedded out to two guys who are probably not even their top three players. I mean, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and maybe Derek White are the top three players. So it goes to show you how much money that the Celtics gave to their stars. But, man, this is probably best case scenario for the Celtics. You still got your three stars, like I just said. Now you got Simmons. You still got your tremendous depth with guys like Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser. So this allows the Celtics. I mean, this is the best case scenario. This is probably the best offseason they could have hoped for.
I mean, you really can't trade Derek White. You just signed him to a large extension. I mean, you could, but you don't want to eat all that money. I'll tell you that right now.
They want to keep Derek White. He's a really good piece for them.
He single-handedly almost won them the title a couple of years ago. So you're not trading him. You're not trading Jaylen Brown, even though there was rumors that there were many trade offers for Jaylen Brown that came in already. But if you're the Celtics, why do you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you break up the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum combo? Like that's a sick combo that they drafted, by the way. How often do you hear a star combo that's drafted both out like naturally, not through trade? So good on them. They figured out how to shed $180 million in tax penalties, but I'm surprised how fast they were able to make those deals and quickly. Now, I don't know how they got onto the second apron. That's a question I would love to ask some of the NBA people behind the scenes and find that out. But you know what? That's what they pay the big bucks for in these front offices. And I remember being very critical when Brad Stevens went from being the head coach to being the GM in the front office. But he must know way more from a strategical perspective than anything else. So I don't know. I think there's more moves coming from the Celtics too. Just a hunch. Now, another trade that went down. The New Orleans Pelicans are trading C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a future second-round pick to the Wizards for Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, and the number 40 pick. This trade makes no sense, really, to be quite honest. These two teams were in the basement all of this past season. The Wizards, I really don't know what to expect from the Wizards anymore. The Pelicans, I'm kind of surprised they traded C.J. McCollum. It seemed like a good place for him. That was his home for many years. Actually, he was on the Trailblazers before he ended up with the Pelicans.
He was Damian Lillard's partner for a while.
I thought that was a great duo at the time too. But I don't put a lot of stock, as bad as that sounds, into this trade because these are two horrible teams.
Yeah, I mean, these are two teams that are not going to be competing, not even for championships, but probably for even playoff positionings. I mean, when you look at the Pelicans, I mean, I'm guessing maybe they just wanted a younger. I know Zion's a little on the young side, and they're still trying to build around him. And I mean, if he did show some promise last year where he looked like he was in better shape. So if he can ever be consistently healthy and in good shape, he could be one of the most impactful players. I mean, you get a guy who could shoot the three and shoot really well like Jordan Poole, who I believe is around 9 to 10 years younger than C.J. McCollum. He's also making a lot less money, so you get to save some salary cap that way. But I'm not sure where the Pelicans are going. And I mean, for the Wizards, I kind of like it for the Wizards. I mean, the Wizards got a lot of young pieces that are promising. Alex Sarr is a really young piece that I like. They got Bud Cunningham, Keyshawn George. They're going to draft another player this year. So now you added a veteran. It kind of reminds me to a lesser degree of the Rockets. When they brought in a veteran like Fred VanVleet, he kind of got a lot of those young guys going. I mean, I'm hoping that C.J. McCollum, who's a really good team guy, he's a huge locker room guy. He's a guy that you're definitely going to respect. He's the guy who's going to be there, reliable. So I think he's a tremendous locker room guy that helped those young guys in the Washington Wizards. So I like this for the Washington Wizards more so than I like the Pelicans, because we know Jordan Poole has a history of being the clown. And now you add him with a guy who's not always on the court in Zion Williamson. So I wonder how that match and duo will be going forward.
I mean, and also they Middleton picked up his player option, right, to stay in Washington, which was a lot of money, by the way, for the Wizards. That one they had no choice over. That was a player option, I think, left over from Milwaukee. Yeah, I don't put any stock into either of these two teams. I kind of feel bad for CJ McCollum ending up on the Wizards. Same thing with Chris Middleton. Like, him and Giannis were a great duo. And actually, they won the title together on that team a couple of years ago, right, in Milwaukee? So,
well, let me ask you this, Nick. I know you said you feel bad for CJ McCollum. Now, neither of these teams are going to win. But given how tough the West is and how easy the East is going to be, which one of these two teams probably has a better shot at maybe sneaking into the play-in tournament as a 10th seed? I would say right now the Wizards may have a better chance because of how open the East is. So this might actually be a blessing for CJ McCollum.
Yeah, actually, you and I are on the same page with this one also. I think that the Wizards are, if I had to pick between these two teams, the Wizards would be the more, I guess, calculated choice would be the way of looking at it. I don't know what the Pelicans are, to be quite honest. Like, they need to go back to the drawing board, because if Zion is your best player, you're in a lot of trouble, considering what he does off the court and all the issues he's been having. That's not the guy I really want to build around in New Orleans. And if I'm a New Orleans fan right now, I'd be a little afraid of what's going on down there. So, yeah, the Wizards would be, I think they could sneak in some way. If they could find a way to get like a B-level player, which I guess, I don't know, where would CJ McCollum fall? I wouldn't say he's an A-level player. I would say he's like a B-ish type player, maybe. Not a C. I think he's a big enough scorer to avoid being a C player. But I think he's like a B- player. He would probably be your leader, along with Chris Middleton. Those would be your two veterans. And then, like you said, they have some young guys. I think that it was good for the Wizards to get rid of Jordan Poole and let him go into the abyss that is New Orleans. And maybe they'll have a chance, but I don't put a whole lot of stock into this. All right, we got to move a little bit quicker. So let's talk about some ownership moves. This was stunning. This was an unbelievable story when I heard it. So the Los Angeles Lakers, now it wasn't necessarily sell for $10 billion, even though that was the headline. It was that they got a valuation of $10 billion. So the Buss family sold for a valuation of $10 billion. I forgot how much they actually owned, but they made a lot of money. A lot of money. And if I'm not mistaken, Jeannie Buss is staying on as like the governing partner and still running the operations under the new ownership. And I want to look that up just so I have all my bearings correctly. But, oh, it's Mark Walter. Now, Mark Walter owns a bunch of teams. Like, he's an LA guy.
He owns the Dodgers, correct?
I think he's part of that that group or that firm that owns the Lakers. I mean, the Dodgers. So he's got a huge portfolio like of teams. And so this is not a surprise that he had the money to buy under that $10 billion valuation. So the Buss family will keep a minority share of the team. Now, I don't know if you knew this or not, but you have to if you want to be an owner in the NBA, you have to maintain a 15% minority ownership to own an NBA team. So they still own 15% of the Lakers franchise. They sold off like everything else just so that they could stay under the ownership umbrella with the Lakers. And then, like I said, Jeannie Buss will remain the Lakers governor and continue to run the team for at least a number of years. So that's not a surprise either. So it says Walter, the CEO and chairman of diversified holding company TWG Global, which is the one you're talking about that owns all the the Dodgers stuff and everything else. Apparently, he's been a stakeholder in the Lakers since 2021. So it says he purchased someone's other share of 26%. That also was when Walter received a right of first refusal on a majority share of the team. So he was already like sneaking around behind the scenes with a small ownership percentage. But what do you make of the $10 billion valuation? This is unprecedented. This is the first time we've ever seen a $10 billion valuation. Not the Yankees, not the Cowboys, the Lakers.
Yeah, I was shocked. I definitely was shocked at the number. Like you said, when you say $10 billion, you think you're talking about the New York Yankees or the Dallas Cowboys. But, I mean, I guess you got to remember that the Los Angeles Lakers is obviously one of their premier spots. I mean, you also got to factor in you got two huge stars. You got one of the biggest international stars on the team in Luka Doncic, and you got probably the biggest star in the NBA and LeBron James on the team. So that makes a lot of sense. And, I mean, I'm glad that the Lakers now are going to have new ownership. I know they still have the Buss family at 15%, but they're not going to have the final say on, what's going to be happening. It's going to be the majority stakeholders. And, I know the Lakers have had a history of holding on stars, letting stars do what they want, paying them whatever they want, and letting it ride out. I think this is an organization now who's going to be all about winning. And I think this is going to put more pressure on guys like Luka Doncic. I think now, since this is going to be kind of new ownership, this ownership is going to hold Luka Doncic accountable. Now, if Luka Doncic has a couple years where he's not in shape and he's not winning, this is a team that might get off of Luka Doncic and try to rebuild another way. This is a team that's not going to sit put and try not to compete. You see what they did with the LA Dodgers and how they went all in with that? They're probably going to try to do the same thing with the Los Angeles Lakers.
So just to give you that list, because you were talking about the different teams. So Walter and TWG Global have interest in the Dodgers, the Sparks, the Premier League club in Chelsea, and the Professional Women's Hockey League. And also they have motorsports. And Walter owns several auto racing teams, including Cadillac Formula One. So the guy's got a diverse portfolio by far. So this makes total sense why this is a good move, I think, for the Lakers. Now, the only thing is we're kind of heading into an era when there's really no single ownerships anymore. And it's becoming more of a business than family run. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But here's the number that's going to sound shocking, okay? So the Lakers have been owned by the Buss family since 1979. When Jerry Buss purchased the franchise from Jack Kent Cooke for $67.5 million. Think about that for a second. $67.5 million becomes a $10 billion valuation. I would say that's a pretty good profit at the office.
Yeah, I know we got to factor in inflation, but inflation isn't that bad. So to go from 66 million to 10 billion, I mean, it goes to show you the growth in the sport. I mean, and you got to remember when he would have bought the Los Angeles Lakers, this is before the NBA became this global phenom. This is before we really had the Larry Bird and Magic Johnson rivalry of the 80s. This is before we had the Michael Jordan Bulls of the 90s. And then you had the Kobe's and LeBron and Steph Curry who just continues to grow this game. So it goes to show you how much sports has increased and how much the NBA has increased. And goes to show you that right now in the NBA, the Los Angeles Lakers organization is the cream of the crop of teams that own.
Yeah, this is incredible. I mean, since 1979, when the Buss family bought it, 11 titles, the most by any team in NBA history. So that goes to show you the Laker brand, how hard they play, and what they've earned, and why the valuation is as big as it is. All right, let's quickly move on. More NBA ownership news. The NBA owners approve a $1.5 billion sale of the Wolves, and the WNBA's links to Mark Lowry and the guy I hate publicly here in New York, Alex Rodriguez. We've talked about this before, actually. There was a lot of controversy. Could A-Rod and Mark Lowry actually get the money? That was a huge issue. If you remember, the ownership stake was almost canceled way back because they couldn't get the proper money needed. It finally goes through. And now A-Rod is an official NBA owner.
Yeah, this was only a matter of time. I'm not shocked at all. And now that this is over, I wonder if Alex Rodriguez and new ownership can probably finally bring stability to Timberwolves who really hasn't been a great organization that free agents want to go to. It's always been considered one of the worst organizations and an organization that players want to avoid. Hopefully now, if this could bring stability and these owners prove that they're going to do whatever it takes to put this team in a winning position, maybe this could be a team that does attract free agents, unlike they had before with the older ownership.
I don't know. I'm still a little bit skeptical because A-Rod has had some issues, business issues before, trying to buy teams, trying to get in ownership circles. Tried to buy a baseball team. That didn't work out. There was a lot of issues with this situation. It took them 51 months to close this. And more than 1,500 days after the initial agreement was made to officially get this closed. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. When you transfer ownership, it is not an easy situation to handle. But I feel like we've seen ownership transfers go way easier than this one. But A-Rod was not going to be able to do it himself. He needed some kind of business financial guy to really jump in the mix. And I don't know. Again, I kind of hope they can turn it around so some free agents would actually go to Minnesota and play with Anthony Edwards, because I think that's an incredible city to play in. They finally started to figure it out with some of the young players there. And I don't know. I'm still skeptical if free agents are going to want to play there.
Yeah, I think with Anthony Edwards, I mean, he seems like a guy who at least wants to be there for the foreseeable future. I think he'll at least sign another contract or two before he even thinks about leaving there. And I think with him being there, I think if this ownership can prove that they're going to, pay the money to try to put a winning organization there, I think it can change the perspective about how this organization is looked at among free agents in the future.
I'm going to give you another number now, okay, since we want to talk about ownership sells again. So Glenn Taylor, who's 83-year-old Glenn Taylor, who bought the team in 1994 for $88 million, sells for $1.5 billion. Again, another good profit at the office, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking what, almost 20 times your profit? That's insane.
So even though he bitched and moaned about the whole process and how A-Rod and Mark Lowry broke the rules that were involved in getting this done, I think turning $88 million into $1.5 billion is a good day at the office. Just saying, that's me. If I could turn $88 million into $1.5 billion, I'd just shut my mouth and walk away with the money and just not complain anymore. So it is what it is. Quickly, a few more topics. What would you like to hit on the NBA draft?
Yeah, I just want to say I think this is a really strong draft. I know compared to last year was considered one of the weaker drafts. This not so much. This has been a draft that's been talked about for quite some time, and obviously you guys start at the top with Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg's a generational prospect. I mean, him, Victor Wembanyama, and Anthony Davis are probably the three best players we've seen that come out in the last 20 or so years since LeBron James, and Cooper Flagg is just as good as any of them. So the Dallas Mavericks are going to get a great pick. You got the two Rucker guys in Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. You got Trey Johnson, and then you got VJ Edgecombe, who's a guy who can play offense and defense. So when you look at the draft, I mean, obviously Dallas, they're definitely going to take Cooper Flagg. I mean, looks like Nico Harrison's going to be able to save his job because of winning the lottery. The San Antonio Spurs, who already have a good roster, is going to be at a really good player in the second pick, probably Dylan Harper, who's going to be a guy they can build around with Stephon Castle and the young guys. And then you got the 76ers. It seems like they're probably going to want to go with a guy like VJ Edgecombe, a guy who's more pro-ready, and a guy who can help offense and defensively. And then Charlotte and Utah are going to hope to, build their teams and hopefully get out of the abyss of the NBA. So it's going to be interesting because there's a lot of franchise in these picks who have been bad for a long time, and hopefully this could be the draft to get them over the hump. But when you look at the first three picks, I mean, it's teams that were already kind of in a good position with Dallas, the Spurs, and the 76ers. So I guess the rich just get richer in terms of that.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting draft. I mean, the number one overall pick is the most obvious. And if Nico Harrison decides to pull a Nico Harrison and doesn't take Cooper Flagg, his ass should be run out of the building if he doesn't take Cooper Flagg. And I just found it funny. They did all the pop-up circumstances. Oh, we'll bring him in for a workout and blah, blah. Come on. You're really fooling people by doing that. You know you're going to take him. Just say. You could even say already, since you're the number one overall pick, we are taking him. There's no violation for that because you're the number one overall pick. So that's the most obvious. Just to talk about my Nets for a second, which have been a disaster. Bleacher Report is now set, and I'm stunned by this. The Nets now have the number 8, the number 19, the 22, the 26, and the 27. I swear, as a Net fan sitting here, they better do something. Something.
Now, would you rather have him trade all those picks for a veteran that's a proven guy, or do you want him just to, look at this as like a lottery and you just hit all these ping pong balls and hopefully that you get lucky at one of these guys that turn into a superstar?
You got to try and go in the draft because this draft is actually not as bad. Like I heard there's a lot of good players coming out of it. The number 8 for sure, I think you draft because that's high enough. It's in the top 10. If you want to take like the 19, the 22, the 26, and the 27, because they're at the end of the first round anyway, and maybe you want to trade those and see if someone will come to Brooklyn, maybe you'll get that. But you really don't have enough guys in Brooklyn to or something to build around to bring another name. And also, are guys going to be scared after the whole Durant and Kyrie Irving and nonsense? Are they going to want to come to Brooklyn anymore? That's a whole nother issue that you have to figure out. I heard a rumor the other day that RJ Barrett could be traded to the Nets, which I kind of hope they don't do that. He kind of was a disaster in New York with the Knicks. So I would stay away from that. But I wouldn't mind if they took all those picks and drafted and take your chances and see what happens. But this is the NBA. We have no idea what happens right before the draft. So we'll see what happens. And we'll talk about the draft results after they come out next week. But let's quickly move on because we're a little bit over time here. But I want to get to this story. Per Pro Football Talk, an arbiter found NFL encouraged teams to collude regarding guaranteed contracts. Now, this story is trending all over the place. Because now people are saying, wait a minute, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell told the owners to collude against NFL teams and players, and this should sound the alarms like crazy. So, Mr. Football over there, tell me what you read or thought when you saw this headline.
I mean, obviously, I was shocked that this is something that they've been colluding and keeping on the wraps. But ultimately, if you just look at how these contracts have been distributed in the NFL has always felt this way, where they've always tried to lower the guaranteed money. And you think in a sport where guys don't know whether they're going to get a career-ending injury in the next game or not, you think these are the players that deserve the most guaranteed money because they're putting so much at risk. There's no sport, NBA, baseball, where they put their lives and bodies at a higher risk than football. So these guys deserve the guaranteed money. But then the owners look at on the flip side, where because there's so much injury risk, they don't want to be tied to these guys. They don't want to be like the NBA, where you see a guy like Russell Westbrook, where when he was with the Lakers, where you get these terrible contracts that you're just absolutely stuck with. They want teams to have flexibility, and that's why we see so much parity in the NFL, because when you get a guy that's on a bad contract, usually you can get out of it. And this is obviously stemming from, because it had been around the same time, when they made this announcement where Roger Goodell told the NFL owners to do this. It was about 9 days after the Deshaun Watson deal. And I think that's where this is stemming from. When Deshaun Watson became the first player in NFL history to get a fully guaranteed contract, I think all the owners outside of Cleveland was pissed off, because it was an unspoken rule to say, hey, we don't give out full guaranteed contracts to the NFL. And then the one player that gets it is the guy who has all these allegations out. So what kind of look does that give to the rest of the sports league or the fans when they look at your league and you're like, oh, the one guy that gets the money is the guy who really didn't deserve it? So I think Roger Goodell said, hey, this will never happen again, and we're going to make sure that these guys don't get fully guaranteed contracts. And I think it's just unfortunate, because a guy like Deshaun Watson did deserve it. A guy like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, those are the guys who probably would deserve a full guaranteed contract. But because Deshaun Watson ruined it for the rest of them, guys like Lamar Jackson only get 185 of, I think, the $230 million of it guaranteed.
Yeah, so quickly going through some of the story that Mike Florio and eventually Pablo Torre from Pablo Torre finds out was on the DraftKings network, not there anymore. So it says both the NFL and the NFL Players Association refusing to release a 61-page ruling by system arbiter Christopher Droney in the collusion grievance regarding guarantees in the contracts of certain veteran players. This is a big deal in a lot of ways. Although the NFL won, the NFL lost, as Droney wrote in page 55 and 56 of the January 14th, 2025 ruling. Quote, there is a little question that the NFL Management Council, with the blessing of the commissioner, encouraged the 32 NFL clubs to reduce guarantees in veterans' contracts at the March 2022 annual owners meeting. In other words, the NFL wanted its member teams to collude. That's a big deal. How are we first finding out about this 2 years after this whole thing went down? Number one. Number two, who's the one that exposed the NFL like this? Because usually when someone exposes the NFL, they get exposed and then you never hear from them again. Because the NFL, the Shield, you don't go against them. If you go against them, they kill your reputation and you're gone. But this is a massive allegation now that's coming out. And first of all, the NFL is just going to say, well, we won the case, so we really don't have to speak about it anymore. But you kind of do, because this is collusion.
Yeah, well, Leslie, even if they did win it, and they don't have to worry about any repercussions, what does this mean for the next CBA deal? Obviously when the CBA is up and the NFLPA and the NFL is going to be negotiating, this is going to be probably a huge topic. They're going to be like, hey, listen, you guys were colluding. You were trying to limit some of our veteran players who deserve guaranteed money and limiting how much money they're going to be able to bring home to their families. I think the players might get to a point like, hey, you want us to play more games. You want us to risk more injuries. You want to extend the season. Well, to give us payback, we want full guaranteed contracts. And that might be a dividing factor. And I think with everything that goes on, knowing that the NFL tried to collude against the players, that might be non-negotiable. The players might say, hey, we refuse to play going forward unless you give us our full guaranteed contract. So we might be looking at a lockout when the next CBA is up because of these guaranteed contracts.
You beat me to the punch. I think there's going to be a lockout at some point in the next couple of years. I don't know when the CBA is up. I'm going to look that up really quick as we're sitting here.
I'm pretty sure they had, a 10-year deal in 2020, so it's probably like 2029, 2030.
Okay, so it says the currently active agreement was ratified in 2020 and extends through the 2030 season. So it's 10 years. But if I'm the players and I know that we're being colluded against, now this is more speculative theory than actually saying something's going to happen. But if I'm the players and I know that the NFL was colluding against the money I could possibly be making, because if I'm not mistaken, the average career is what, like 3 years, they say? Typically like 3, maybe 4 years if you don't get hurt really bad from playing the game. Even though they keep introducing all these safety measures and they're putting more penalties in, that doesn't stop people from getting hurt in the NFL. Everyone still gets hurt in serious ways. But if I'm the players, and I guarantee you a lot of players and agents are seeing this report now that it's been exposed, why are they not stepping up into the spotlight and saying, hey, if we're getting colluded against and our money is being affected, we should sit out. We should sit out and demand answers if we were being colluded against. And also, why isn't the NFLPA filing a lawsuit against the NFL for collusion?
Yeah, that's a huge surprise. You think you would see more output from the representatives of the NFLPA, but I know when you see a lot of these answers, you really don't see players holding on until the CBA's up. But, man, when that CBA's up, man, shit's going to hit the fan quickly.
But I could see it happening sooner, depending on how serious this issue actually is. Like I said, you don't really see it. It's rare. You see it from the NFL because the NFL is the shield and no one likes to, because if you go and you hit the shield, it's going to come back and hit you in the face because usually you can't win. There is a legitimate case now that the 61-page report is out there basically saying the only reason they didn't win was because their hand was in the cookie jar, so to speak. So I don't know what the answer to this is. That's why I said it's more speculative theory than actual answer. But if I'm the players, I yell out here, like in a serious way, because they're basically admitting there was collusion. I mean,
yeah, for sure. And I definitely think, like you said, the players have to speak up. And I wonder if in the next next couple of weeks, if we're going to see some players who are going to speak out their opinions about this.
Think about, and the last thing I'll say is, you notice when Roger changed the season from 16 to 17, and then in a couple of years from now, we're talking about an 18-game season. So the NFL is greedy and keeps adding, but they don't care about the safety of the players. You get hurt? Oh, well, that's not our problem. So
yeah, that's not fair. And it's been like that for a long time. And I think we're about to see a movement where these players are finally going to step up to the shield because they have no choice at this point.
You know what the biggest issue they say is? A lot of the players spoke out last year about how they don't like the I forgot what they call it in term, but the double game week or the short week. They don't
Thursday
like
night games when they have to play on Sunday. It's not enough time for their bodies to recover from game to game.
And we've seen a lot of injuries in those games because of that. And now teams are getting smart and they're actually sitting out some of their players for the second games. They're like, we can't do this. The strain. Can you imagine playing 2 NFL games in a week? No.
It's not sustainable, and that's why the players said that they should switch it to where the only teams that play on Thursday night are teams that are coming off of a bye week because they didn't have to play that Sunday before.
The problem is you're going to have to do a lot of strategic scheduling to get all the games you want on Thursday, and that's going to be a disaster in itself. But we're going to end it there because we are way, way, way over. But make sure you follow us on social media for Empty the Bench at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. 960 plus subscribers. We are less than 40 away from 1,000. So please hit the button below if you're watching on video. If you're on audio, go over to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. If you're on the video and you want to take us with you on the road, listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Odyssey, a bunch of different platforms. So please go find us on there. And Empty the Bench and the full network presented by Playback. Now that the NBA is over, a lot of WNBA, a lot of baseball, until we make our way over to college basketball and college football, which Anthony's looking forward to, and the NFL season. So bear with us as we are now in kind of the summer lull for now with NBA and NHL being over. But yeah, that'll about do it for this episode for 279. Bear with us, as I said, because this was a huge NBA episode, but it's worth it because there's a lot of NBA stuff in the weeds that we're going to pull out of. So we will see you next week for episode 280. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. We will see you next week, everybody.